Hi folks, this is Dr. Rob Cywes, and today we're going to talk about a very specific subject, a very specific topic that's going to have a narrow focus. I would welcome all of you to watch this, and even if it doesn't pertain to you, but for a specific group of people, this is a critically important video. And we're talking specifically about infertility, and in particular PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and how to manage PCOS if you're trying to get pregnant. And we work here in South Florida with a number of IVF groups, in vitro fertilization groups, where these gynecologists and obstetricians have a group of women and men who, for a variety of reasons, are unable to get pregnant. And one of the commonest causes of infertility is something called polycystic ovarian syndrome. So just briefly, I've got other videos on this channel, and I'd urge you, if you've got PCOS or have been questioned or diagnosed with that, to go back and look at that PCOS video. But briefly speaking, PCOS occurs in a particular set of women, and it is a direct consequence of chronic excessive carbohydrate consumption. When you eat a lot of sugar and starch, that sugar and starch enters your bloodstream, and the way the body clears that intravascular hyperglycemia, high blood sugar levels, is to release insulin from the pancreas, and insulin's job is to shove the sugar into the cells. It shoves it into the liver, and in the liver cells, those liver cells turn the sugar into fat, and that's why you gain a bit of weight. And what happens is, as the sugar gets into the cells get flooded with sugar. So that sugar, high levels of sugar, is toxic into the bloodstream. So the insulin shoves it out of the bloodstream to protect the bloodstream, and it shoves it into the cells. But now the cells are suffering toxicity of high sugar, so they shut the front door. They shut the insulin receptor down. That's called insulin resistance. And if you're insulin resistant and you can't produce a lot of insulin, the sugar builds up in the bloodstream, and we call that diabetes. And it's not uncommon for women who eat a lot of sugar and starch, who have low insulin production capacity, to develop gestational diabetes. But they get pregnant fairly easily. On the other hand, we've got women who, when the cells shut the front door, they're insulin resistant, the pancreas is able to produce massive amounts of insulin to shove that sugar out of the bloodstream. Those women may be considered to be pre-diabetic, and that's where the confusion comes in. Their A1C may be in the high 5s, but they're not diabetic. Blood sugar may be slightly high, but they're not in the diabetic range. They do not have diabetes, and they're unlikely to get diabetes. But they gain weight, and that excess sugar has significant damaging issues in the blood, in the cells of the body. I'm not going to talk about that right now, but the hyperinsulinemia, high levels of insulin do two things. Number one, persistent high levels of insulin affect the cholesterol production pathway. So you got this massive overproduction of cholesterol continuously. Cholesterol should be produced during meals and should not be produced after meals. That's the topic for another day. But when you're hyperinsulinemic, those insulin levels are up all the time. You're producing cholesterol all the time. And why is that important when it comes to PCOS? Is because cholesterol is the common starting precursor. It's the precursor molecule for all steroid hormones. Whether it's cortisol, some of the adrenal hormones, and then the sex hormones, testosterone, progesterone, and estrogen. And those are the three hormones we're primarily going to talk about. We can also talk about cortisol levels. So insulin is producing massive amounts of cholesterol. So there's this huge amounts of cholesterol to overproduce these steroid hormones. And at first we do. We produce ridiculous amounts of testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone, which throws your cycles out of whack a little bit. Heavy cycles, abnormal uterine bleeding. However, to counter that effect, here's the beauty about the human body. The other effect that hyperinsulinemia does is it blocks the early enzymes that convert cholesterol downstream to the steroid hormones. So when it does that in a female, you're no longer producing estrogen and progesterone. So your estrogen and progesterone numbers go way down, particularly the estrogen. and your testosterone numbers go through the roof. When you're hyperinsulinemic because of chronic excessive carbohydrate consumption, you produce massive amounts of testosterone with low estrogen and low progesterone. So what happens is, in your ovaries begin to produce that little ovum that's going to be the egg for fertility. It produces them, and it produces them in a cell that slowly swells with fluid. And as soon as your estrogen and progesterone switch around day 14 of your cycle, that little egg, that little cyst should burst and release the egg that then gets picked up, and you're able to get pregnant if you're trying to. But under the influence of testosterone, that little cyst builds up, and it never pops. So every month you get another cyst forming, and that's where the label polycystic, multiple cysts of the ovary comes from. So when you ultrasound those people's ovaries, you got multiple cysts. And that's a testosterone effect, and it is a hyperinsulinemia effect, and it is an effect of chronic excessive carbohydrate consumption. So if you've got PCOS as a young girl, as a woman not trying to get pregnant, or a young woman who's trying to get pregnant, you've got all the time in the world, you've maybe got a decade to get rid of your PCOS, absolutely go on a keto carnivore diet, get rid of the carbohydrates, and over the course of 2 to 5 years, your PCOS will go away. In fact, the commonest problem we see in our practice in fertile females with PCOS is unexpected pregnancy in the year or two after they go on a ketogenic diet, because their PCOS goes away, they don't socially distance from sperm, and that sperm leaps into them, because they never have sex, of course. That sperm leaps into them, and boom, they're pregnant. So we always have the contraception discussion, and then 3 months later, with the same group of people, we have the bump discussion. So that is crucial if you've got PCOS, is to get rid of carbohydrates. And most gynecologists don't understand that. They equate PCOS with excess weight. Yes, they're associated, but they're not causal. Having said that, if you are already seeing an IVF doctor, if you desperately want to get pregnant and you have PCOS and you're overweight, I review a lot of scientific papers. And one of the scientific papers I've just reviewed that I think is about to be published is an excellent paper. Looked at a group of women with PCOS who were in IVF programs who had bariatric surgery, had obesity surgery. Whether it was a bypass, and I don't advocate for a bypass, no, but a sleeve, a band, or a intragastric balloon. And I favor the intragastric balloon, the band, and then the sleeve in that ratio, because usually those people are overweight as well. But if you have PCOS, you've struggled to get pregnant, you're in an IVF program, particularly when you're spending tens of thousands of dollars on your fertility, consider bariatric surgery or consider an intragastric balloon, because it radically accelerates your weight loss, radically helps you to deal with your carbohydrate addiction, especially in the programs such as ours. And I'm not trying to promote what I do on the bariatric surgery side. We have seen statistically massively positive results in patients with PCOS in an infertility program who give up the carbohydrates and have bariatric surgery. It is your single best shot at a successful pregnancy. So if you want to talk about it, at least if you want to discuss it further, give us a shout, 561-517-0642. We do consults all over the world. And we don't have to be the people doing the surgery. But I'm not a huge advocate of surgery unless it's absolutely necessary. And this is one of those conditions where the statistics, the science, the biology absolutely support the benefit of surgery, not as an alternative, but as an adjunct, if you are older or struggling to get pregnant and are desperate for that pregnancy. If you've got time, don't have the surgery. Consider it, but it's not necessary. The ketogenic way of life is. But if you don't have time, if you want to have that baby sooner than later, and you're struggling with PCOS, consider surgery up front in conjunction with a ketogenic diet. If we can help to flesh this out, and I'm going to get a lot of arguments against this, but we also understand from all the patients we see from these IVF doctors how desperate these women are and how narrow that time frame is. If you're in your 40s, if you're struggling, if your husband's older and you have PCOS, don't discount this. Come and explore the options. come and at least hear what we have to say. You don't have to pull the trigger on this. And if you're objective, if you're uninvolved in this, do not get critical. You don't understand how important getting pregnant is for this group of women. And I'm not trying to prey on you, I'm trying to help you. Consider bariatric surgery. Give us a shout, 561-517-0642, and we can at least discuss the options. Even if you're not interested in surgery, we can definitely help you to understand this from a chronic excessive carbohydrate perspective rather than a weight loss perspective. Because most gynecologists target weight rather than carbohydrates. And of course, if you're hyperinsulinemic, you're going to become enormous, but you're also going to have PCOS. The problem is not the obesity. The problem is the relationship with sugar and starch. I hope this helps. I am the Carb Addiction Doc. I am a ketogenically focused addiction specialist who also does surgery. Give us a call.